Welcome back. It was a beautiful sunny day in my part of the world today, and I hope you are all keeping well. We're going to continue on with inking and printing a carved block, and I'm going to be using the same image from our previous video. So this is the eagle that I carved on a piece of Speedy Cut Speedball product carving block. And I've set up my workspace, and I'm going to introduce you to some of the things that are on my table laid out. I'll be using water-based paints today. These are really great for home and classroom use because of how quickly they dry. Some of the paints that I've used in the past are the Golden Open Slow Drying Acrylic, which is quite nice because it does stay moist for quite a period of time. And the Shiva water-based block printing ink is another one of my favorites. And also this Speedball product, which I picked up for my class use. I do like it because it dries fairly quickly, and students can make a greeting card the evening of, they can send it out in the mail the evening that they printed it. So it's quite a great product to use for printing. This is another one that I like. I've used it in the past. It's called Aqua Intaglio printing ink. It's also a Speedball product, and it has a little bit more open time, so it doesn't dry very quickly, but it reminds me in some ways of a lot of the oil-based paints that I used to use. So the reason we're using these particular paints today, or the two of them, the Speedball and perhaps the Golden Open, is because they afford us really easy cleanup afterwards with just soap and water, and because of how quickly they dry. And that's important to me today. I'm in a makeshift space to provide this video. So the other thing that I've got is a Baron, and this is a traditional Baron for pressing down on the paper and making a good contact with the block beneath it. And if you don't have one of those, a nice wooden spoon will do. And this is something that I often use in my classroom, and it provides a good amount of pressure, or your bone folder. Some of the papers that I'm going to be printing on today, I have a Strathmore printmaking pad. These are small sheets, and you can also get them in a large pad size as well. And this one is a fairly lightweight, but the heavyweight paper is also available. The heavyweight has a bit of a dapple to it, almost like a cold press watercolor paper, so sometimes it doesn't get as nice a print as a smooth sheet of paper would. And I really like the smooth texture of this Strathmore printmaking ink in the lightweight type. There's also a variety of papers that you probably have on hand at home that you could try. I like a lot of the Oriental papers for printmaking. Some of them have beautiful fibers in them. I'm not sure if you can see some of those beautiful papers. This one has a lot of that cherry bark in it. From a hand paper maker's perspective, that's always nice when it's got those embellishments inside the paper. Here's another one that's a little bit smooth on both sides, but again, quite fibrous inside, so a little bit more depth. And then some cardstock and different colored papers, which are always fun to print on. So we'll see how many we can get done in a few minutes. I just want to give you an idea of this next stage because it's fairly important to get everybody going. So we're going to apply the Speedball block printing ink to this glass surface, and don't want too much paint. Usually just for these smaller projects, a little bit less than this is probably what I need, but I've actually applied a healthy amount here. I'm wearing gloves today to protect my hands from the paint, and I'm working at a very strange angle here. I'm really limited in the amount of space that I can do these tutorials for you, so please bear with me. What I'm doing is trying to roll that out quite evenly. It's got a real tacky sound to it. I don't know if you can hear that. Sometimes that indicates that I've got too much paint. So I'm going to just try and print a little bit before this dries out. I could always use a spray bottle to give that a bit of a spritz too if I was concerned about that amount of tack, because it's a little thicker than I would like. Yesterday we did a test print with the color box pad, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go right to my paint here, and I hope you can see that. My angle of camera is right for this, and we're just applying a good surface there, making sure all aspects of that printing block are covered. When I lay down my brayer, I always want to make sure that I'm using that little edge there, and that will protect it from getting the roller area stuck in a piece of paper or damaged. You have to be careful with scratches on some of these things because they impress very easily. So I'm taking just a piece of copy paper, and I just want to see what this first impression is going to be like before we proceed to one of the cardstocks or one of the decorative papers or good quality printmaking paper, because this gives us a lot of information here as well, this first few prints. So I'm using my fingertips as well. I like to articulate that edge. I want to make sure everything's covered. I can peel back this to take a peek, because sometimes it's nice to be able to see what area doesn't have enough ink on it, and I can see that I didn't press down in this area enough, or maybe I didn't apply enough ink on the surface of the block there. There's a little bit of resistance, so I can actually lay that back down and feel that, and I'm going to just peel right up and see what we have. So there you go, there's the first one. It's the paint is quite thick. I'm hoping I'm getting enough detail, and we're going to just continue on with another paper to show you the different effects that we can achieve. So I'm not going to worry about cleaning my block at this point, and if I did want to clean it and apply a different color, I would use a baby wipe, and that's a quick and easy way to take the surface paint off, and you can also use running water and soap if you want. So let's just keep going, and again, making sure my pad is, oops, and this is always good to have waste paper below you. So I'm just going to fold that in on itself so I know where the mess is. So one of the things that I do often when I am printing is I will have a piece or a few pieces of scrap paper below my block, and I will lay my paper down on top. I'm going to try a yellow cardstock next just to see what this looks like, and I'm just going to center it somewhat here. I will also take another piece of newsprint or a piece of clean copy paper and lay it on top, because sometimes my burnishing tools, whether I'm using a spoon to apply pressure down or whether I'm using the Baron, it might scuff up the back of the paper, and I really don't want that to happen. So this takes all the marks from the tool. Maybe you've got a little bit of ink on your hands. So this is a fairly nice way to protect your surface. So again, finding my edges, making sure that they're adequately printed, and if you want to make sure you've got enough pressure in those center areas, you can just give it a little extra going over. You can actually apply too much pressure, and the paint will then get into those tiny crevices that you've carved out, and we don't want that. So it's just a feeling your way through it type of process. Again, let's take a look and see. I just want to press down in there, make sure I've got all that inked. I might not have had enough ink on the block, but let's take a boo, see what we've got. Oh, I see another area there where we missed. But I do like the yellow in the background. I like that little bit of light, and sometimes the colored papers make a big difference. So let's ink that up one more time, and underneath these lights, my printing paint may be getting a little bit dry, but I'm just going to continue with this last print, and then we'll go to a different kind of paint just to see what our differences are. So I'm just going to ink this block up again one more time, making sure we've got all areas nicely covered. Sometimes it's hard to know. You have to look at it in the light. You might be able to see areas that have been missed. There, get all areas. I'm going to show you how to set your registration up too for printing. If you have a run that you're doing and there are various sizes, that's always very, very handy. Let's try one of the Oriental papers. I'm not worried about placement at this point. These are just the first papers just to see what they look like and how they're relating. And once I get to a point that I like my papers and I want to do a number of them, I'll print them all in sequential order, just making sure the registration is placed. Okay, this is lovely because you can actually see through this paper enough to be able to see where those lines are transferring. It's very delicate paper in some ways, but also very strong. So I don't want to tear the paper as I'm peeling back, but I see my ink is fairly dry and I don't want to pull any of those fibers out. So there we are. Here's this one. So again, I like this paper quality. Things I'm going to have to be concerned about is that my ink isn't drying up too fast or my paint isn't drying up too fast, that I'm spritzing it, not working underneath the hot lights that I've got here today. And right away I am going to go to a different kind of a paint. So on the side here, I'm going to just move this out of the way. On the side I've got a golden open slow drying acrylic, and I've just put it out on a piece of freezer paper, and I know that you're not able to see what I'm doing here, and I'm just going to ink this up. It's a different color, so I didn't clean my plate before doing this. We might be able to discern those colors, but let's take a look. I'm going to try this piece here, which is a lovely little decorative piece of paper from a scrapbooking project. It's got some areas of gold and silver inlaid in it. So I just want to see what that's going to look like. And again, being careful not to get ink on the important aspects of this paper. And again, small piece here I'm working on to test whether this is going to be a good paper to use in future projects. Oops. Pull that off and give it a bit of pressure. Let's see what we came up with there. That one turned out quite nice. That paint, having just been spread out, is still open, and so that's quite a nice turnout on that particular piece. And I do like the little gold and silver bits that are showing up in the background. One more thing I'm going to show you before we call this video finished is registration. So under here, I hope you can see this. It's a little bit out of your line of your viewpoint here, but what I've done is I have set myself up a grid or two squares or rectangles, and they're areas to define where my pieces of paper are going to be. If I were doing a run, all of these pieces of paper might be the same size, and my printing block has also an area that's defined for it, and that would be where it would be placed. And so I would be inking up my plate and by using that area that I've defined on the outside, laying my paper completely over top of it. So let's try that, shall we? And I think you'll see how that works. It's very quick when you're doing a number, and especially handy if you were doing two colors on a block where registration is going to be a very, very important consideration. And I put that rectangular mark on a piece of freezer paper because freezer paper will wipe clean if I get some of the ink on there, just with a moist towelette or a baby wipe. So there we are. We're going to just set that piece up. We're going to lay this piece on top for registration and try to line up one corner of that. Put a piece of clean paper over top, just to protect the back side of that. And with pressure, we'll just see if we can get another good print like the previous one. Again, me with my urge to be very tactile here and get right into the print. All right, find my edges, make sure that they're amply printing. Okay. Peel this away. Oh, not such a good print. See, it's drying already. So I could get one and then I would have to apply more ink, but it's the registration process basically. If I were to lay it back down after inking with a little bit more ink, wonder if we could get a little bit more ink in there before it dries up entirely. Tip number 1, do not do printmaking demos under hot lamps. Unfortunately, my sunshine moved from away from my printing area, so now I'm getting into evening here, and I could have used that sun a little bit longer. So let's try to line that up. We'll pretend that, you know, that's how we would have been doing a 2-color. Oops, and I did see a little bit of ink back there. Oh, it's so hard to keep the paper clean. Okay, give it a bit more burnishing. Maybe I'm just not pressing as hard as I need to be pressing. Okay. I should be using clean hands. Take off the gloves and just see, there we go. Well, did get it registered in the correct place, but that paint has dried up. So this is an excellent tutorial for you because it's showing you all the things that actually do go wrong in the studio when you want everything to go right. It's the way it is. And I'm just going to show you a few other things that make a difference. So on the previous piece that we did, I did have a piece of colored paper, and a lot of times I'll use colored papers as my background. This is just a framing device, just to indicate whether I would frame a small piece like that. It gives it a completely different look. All it is black on a chiogami paper, which is decorative, and that's one kind of a fun example. And then I have previous examples that you may have seen in some of the first videos. So this was one of the March hares that I had done, and I had a piece of marbled paper that I decided I want to print on top of, and he quite looks like the Easter Bunny at this point. And I had another piece of paper that I wanted to try a print on, and again I printed on one of my overprinted pieces of paper, and this is a Mossy Paper, M-A-S-I, and it comes on a roll. It's a Chinese type of paper for sumi paint, and it picks up the ink very well actually, but I was wanting to see what it would look like with all of my surface design marks that I had made in a previous class. To give you an idea what the size would look like with a frame, a border around it. These are small pieces, don't forget. These blocks are only about 4 by 6 inches. And often I'll introduce color with markers or coloring pens. Copic markers are one of my favorite, but I love pencil crayons as well. And then once you get that border around it and give it a little bit of breathing room, it ends up being quite a nice piece for the wall. So some of the projects you might be thinking about at this point are greeting cards, tags, envelopes if you do mail art, textile pieces to go in the mail. There's so many different things that you could be using your prints for, and I hope it brings you joy. So thank you for viewing, and until my next video tutorial, I hope that you will all be creating. I think it's an important aspect of self-care, and perhaps we can come out of this knowing that we don't need to wait for everything to be perfect before celebrating the day in front of us. God bless, and we'll be in touch soon. Bye-bye.